No, I suspect the only thing about this whole bot space is that I've only been involved really in it building stuff for about 6 to 7 months, and from the beginning of that time to now, things have massively changed about how we build bots, how we recommend it to customers to build bots, and I suspect that this is a really fast-moving industry. There's lots of different channels coming up all the time. There's lots of different capabilities. I think we're really on the cusp of what's going to come next, and I suspect in 6 months' time and maybe a year's time, things will look very, very different to what they look like now.
Moving very fast from which always surprises me as to for years I've always thought speech certainly was never going to be an interface. Yeah, I mean, how long have we had? Have we had things like Dragon Dictate or that kind of idea that you could talk to your computer to? I remember when I was at school. I mean, that's 15 years ago or something. The idea that I wouldn't have to type out my essay, I could just read my essay to the computer and it would do the typing, and it never worked. And things.
That's exactly how that touch metaphor that I was using about 2004. That's exactly how touch interfaces were. Lots of people would say you could never use touch as the main input for your system. You always have to have mouse and keyboard. It's just the way it is. And then that proved not to be true. And I think that whilst speech is a much harder problem to solve, it will be solved, and it will be solved very quickly. And there will be a point in time when the input to systems will generally be led by voice. And I think that's a scary but also really interesting, because that changes lots of things. Like if you don't need devices anymore with screens, then there's lots of different scenarios which open up, and it changes the way we interact with technology. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen, not if, I think.
Interesting. So do you actually think that we'll end up driving our computers more, doing our work, as well as just going via voice interfaces and AI type assistants? Or
precisely, that's completely conceivable, and that's definitely the way that speech systems are being developed. They're trying to understand more and more natural language, but I think that they will become ambient computing devices, which you don't necessarily have to have a screen in front of you. You don't necessarily have to have a touch interface. It will be much more voice led. I don't see any reason why that couldn't be achieved in the next 10 or so years. And that will be the operating system. Your speech will be your operating system.
Cool and scary at the same time, I think. But we'll still get it. It's Star Trek, isn't it?
That's why if you look at every major technology company, that's why they're investing so much in speech, because that's the way that they see their operating systems being used in the future. That's why it's so important and critical, and why billions of dollars of research are going into speech right now.
Oscar, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
I think we've covered it all off. I think one thing that I always talk about when I'm at meetups or on talks like this is just that I think the future that Martin's describing will come quicker than a lot of people realize, and we'll get to a point very quickly where every home has a digital assistant in it, and people just start using that as the first kind of interface to their brand. And I think that's going to happen a lot faster than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, exactly. It happened with touch like that. It was literally a space of a year where touch stopped being rubbish to being excellent. And it's going to happen with speech, I think, as well.
And right now, a lot of people don't realize or don't believe that will happen, because the reality is that the technology still isn't quite there yet. And people are still having these frustrated experiences that we've been talking about. So a lot of people are saying, no, that technology is rubbish, but there will be that moment where the technology suddenly gets good enough that the majority of people's experiences are really good, and that'll be it.